Good afternoon. My name is Senator Todd Hilliard, and I am the chairman of the Opioid Abatement Authority Board of Directors, and I'd like to call this meeting to order and welcome you to my district, and the town that my wife is mayor of, Abingdon, Virginia. We're so glad you're here, and we appreciate your attendance at this meeting. The following board members are in attendance: Vice Chair Dr. Sarah Thomason, OAA Secretary Tim Spencer, and an extra special welcome to new member Delegate Brianna Stool, Sheriff Joe Barron, Dr. James Thompson, Sharon Buckland, Darrell Washington, Mike Tillum, and Assistant Secretary Craig Martha. Representing the Secretary of Health and Human Resources, Janet Kelly. We do have a forum. We have a number of guests and staff present as well. And at this time, I'd like to ask them to introduce themselves.
Cindy Newman, Virginia Opioid Abatement Authority, Resource Coordinator for the Western Region.
Jenny Sawyer, I'm the Resource Coordinator for the Eastern Region. Kathy Craig, I'm the Resource Coordinator for the Northern Region.
Charlotte Whitcomb, Director of Operations.
Adam Rosatelli, Director of Finance with the Opioid Abatement Authority.
Tony McDowell, Executive Director.
James Schliessman, Office of the Attorney General, Counsel to the Authority.
Karen Roseanne, Business Manager for OAA.
Matt Terrell, Business Analyst. Right.
Welcome, everyone. The next item of business today is for the board to consider a motion to approve the June 14th minutes as they were posted on the website. Do I hear a motion? I hear a motion. Have a second. Second. Motion and second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Motion carries. And the next item on the agenda is the update from our Attorney General's office.
I believe Mr. Tom Bashir of the Consumer Protection Division is on, Consumer Protection section of the Office of the Attorney General is on the line and is going to go through a brief presentation to the board.
Okay, Mr. Bashir, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm here. I am not able to turn my video on for some reason, but I can hear you, and I assume you can hear me.
You can. Thank you for being here. We look forward to your presentation. Please continue.
Sure. Okay. Excuse me. I will. I'm going to run through this presentation fairly quickly, but if anyone has any questions along the way, feel free to raise your hand or interrupt, and I'll do my best to answer them. We wanted to present an update to the board as to where things stand on various settlements that the Commonwealth has entered into related to various lawsuits or legal actions or multi-state efforts to obtain settlements from opioid manufacturers, distributors, and retailers. Before I get into the numbers, I'll note that for many of the numbers that I'm going to present, these are estimates based on our best calculations of funds that will be coming from the settlements. All of these settlements contain mathematical formulas to determine how much money flows to each state, and in a number of cases, the ultimate determination of those funds is dependent on contingencies such as the level of participation among the states and among local governments within the states. Now, several of these settlements have already been finalized, and funds have already been flowing from them for, in some cases, 2 or 3 years now. So we have, for those settlements, at least a much better grasp of the funds that we expect to receive from them going forward. So we do have, I think, a clearer idea now of the funds we can be expecting in the years going forward from at least several of these settlements. Although it's possible that there might be some some variation in these amounts going forward. The timing of the payments that are expected to be received from these settlements Might also be subject to some variation here and there as well. Again, for the settlements that are already underway and have been underway for a couple of years, there is a process in place so that the timing and amounts of the payments that we expect to receive are much more predictable. There are other settlements that have just recently been finalized or in the process of being finalized, and so there might be a little bit more uncertainty or variance in those cases. But we think, based on past experience, that we can approximate with a fairly good deal of accuracy both the amounts we expect to receive and the relative timing of those payments. The settlements that the Commonwealth has entered to date, there's a number of them, and for those who might remember last year's update, this list has grown somewhat. We've entered settlements with the consulting firm McKinsey & Company, with three major opioid distributors, McKesson, Cardinal Health, and Cencora, formerly known as AmerisourceBergen, with Janssen Pharmaceuticals, which is a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson, with Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals, Purdue Pharma. I'm going to come back to, there's a reason it has an asterisk beside it, which I'll get into in a little bit, but Endo Pharmaceuticals, Teva Pharmaceuticals, Allergan, CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, and Kroger. These are all part of a more recent wave of settlements that we've entered into. And then there's a group of what we call second and third tier distributors and manufacturers. These are smaller companies that have operated in the opioid space that the multi-state group has been negotiating settlements with. And so those will now appear on this list as well. If we can go to the next slide, I'll get into some of the numbers on the specific settlements. The McKinsey settlement was the first settlement that we entered into, the first multi-state settlement that we entered into, and that was back in 2021. Most of the funds from the McKinsey settlement have already been paid out to the states. There's only one remaining payment that will be coming to the Commonwealth from that settlement in April of next year of about $585,000 to date. Over $13 million from that settlement has been paid to the Commonwealth. All of that has been transferred to the Opioid Abatement Authority. The next major settlement we entered into was with the three major opioid distributors. This is, at least to date so far, the biggest single settlement that the multi-state group has negotiated and entered into. And this settlement will be paying out funds until 2038. The settlement is spread. The payments for the settlement are spread out over about 15 years. Ultimately, over that time, we project that about $230 million will go to the Opioid Abatement Authority. To date, as you can see, just shy of $50 million has flowed to the authority from this settlement. So that leaves about between 180 and 181 million remaining. Now, one note I'll make on this settlement: if you look down on future payments to that July 2027 number, you'll see it's a good bit smaller than all the other numbers for the future payments. That's because this settlement contains an option that allows the settling companies to prepay some of their future payments if certain conditions are met. And originally, that projection for that July 2027 number was up in that $13 million range, similar to the other numbers for those projected future payments. But earlier this year, two of the three companies elected to prepay their 2027 payment this year. So that has reduced the 2027 projected payment, and it reduces the overall slightly reduces the overall nominal value of the expected total that'll be received from this payment, because by prepaying, they got to take advantage of a provision in the agreement that allows them to prepay at a discount, at a slightly discounted rate. So overall, the trade-off is the total nominal value of the settlement dropped by a small amount, but we got some of the money sooner. It's possible in this case that some or all of these companies might elect to prepay some of their future amounts as well. If that happens, we'll adjust the projections accordingly. But as things stand now, this is what the projections for this settlement looks like. The next one is the settlement with Janssen Pharmaceuticals. This one, you'll see there are no more future payments expected in this settlement until 2026. To date, the authority has already received the majority of the funds that are expected from this settlement. And that's because this settlement contained a provision that said that if states hit a benchmark of full participation by the local government subdivisions in that state, then the first 4 years of payments that would be due from this settlement would be accelerated into the first year. We hit that benchmark, and so the first 4 years of payments from this settlement, which would have been 2022, 23, 24, and 25, were all accelerated into the first year. And so that's good for the Commonwealth because it means we've received more money from this settlement up front. And those payments were accelerated without a discount, unlike the prepayment in the distributor settlement. The acceleration in the Janssen settlement occurred with no discount applied to those future payments that were being accelerated. We are now, though, in that gap because those first 4 years of payments were accelerated. We're now in a little bit of a gap before the payments will restart again. So in 2026, they'll restart again, and they'll continue through 2031. But as you can see, to date, the majority of the funds that the Commonwealth expects to receive from this settlement, almost 40 million out of 53, or for the authority share, almost 40 million out of the 53 million and change that it could expect, have already been dispersed. The next one is the settlement with Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals. This is a settlement that was incorporated into a bankruptcy proceeding, actually 2 bankruptcy proceedings, because Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals initially filed for bankruptcy. There was a settlement reached that was incorporated into a bankruptcy reorganization plan, and funds began flowing from that settlement. And then Mallinckrodt's financial performance continued to deteriorate, so it went into bankruptcy again. The settlement was modified somewhat, and the upshot of all of that is that the authority share from this settlement is what you see on the screen there, a little over $4.1 million, and all of that money has now been paid out from this settlement. This one is complete. Purdue Pharma. This settlement is in limbo right now because Purdue Pharma filed for bankruptcy back in 2019. The Commonwealth and a number of other states had initiated litigation against Purdue Pharma, as well as at least a couple thousand local government subdivisions across the country had initiated litigation against Purdue Pharma. Purdue Pharma filed for bankruptcy, and that brought all of those lawsuits to a halt. There was a settlement reached that was incorporated into a bankruptcy reorganization plan for Purdue Pharma. That reorganization plan was approved by the bankruptcy court, but then it was appealed by a few of the stakeholders in the bankruptcy, the biggest one being the federal government. The Office of the U.S. Trustee in the Department of Justice appealed it. It went up to the Supreme Court of the United States. And earlier this year, the Supreme Court vacated the reorganization plan. and sent it back down to the bankruptcy court. So we are now in the process. When I say we, I mean all of Purdue's creditors, but in particular the multi-state group that we're a part of. We are all now in the process of trying to essentially reconstruct the settlement that we had, and trying to reconstruct it on terms that would actually be a little bit better for the states than the prior settlement. But that is a process that is a work in progress, and it is ongoing and has not reached a conclusion yet. So that's the reason for the asterisk beside Purdue Pharma. As of yet, we don't have. We had a settlement. It got vacated by the Supreme Court. We're in the process of trying to put together a new one, but we don't have a finalized settlement for Purdue Pharma yet. So that one is still to be determined. The next one is Indo Pharmaceuticals. This is another one where a multi-state settlement was reached and incorporated into a bankruptcy reorganization plan. The authorities' share from the Indo settlement, as you can see, was just a little bit under $4 million. The funds from this settlement have now been paid out, and it's complete. The next several slides are going to deal with a group of companies that were all part of a second large wave of settlements with some fairly large companies, and that are going to produce a substantial amount of funds that will be flowing to the Commonwealth and the authority over the next several years. Teva Pharmaceuticals, which is an opioid manufacturer, an Israeli company. We entered in the multi-state group, of which Virginia is a part, entered into a settlement with Teva. The expected share that will flow to the authority from this settlement is about $48.5 million. We are fairly early in the process of the implementation of this settlement. So thus far, only a little over $7 million from this settlement has flowed from this settlement to the authority. That leaves over $41 million that is still scheduled to flow to the authority from this settlement between now and 2035. The payments from this settlement will stretch out over the next decade plus. The next one is Allergan Pharmaceuticals. Again, this is another part of this more recent wave of settlements. So as you can see, the majority of the funds from this settlement that are scheduled to flow to the Commonwealth and to the authority have not been paid out yet. So far, about $7.6 million from this settlement has been distributed to the authority. About $19.1 million is still left to go to the authority from now until 2029. And then we have settlements with three large pharmacy retailers, CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart. The CVS settlement, there'll be ultimately over $59 million will flow from this settlement to the authority from now until 2032. So far, again, because because this is a more recent settlement, only a little over 10% of the funds from the expected funds from this settlement have flowed to the authority, about $7.6 million. The bulk of the funds from this settlement are still yet to come. Similar situation in Walgreens. In the Walgreens settlement, so far, a little over $8.2 million has flowed from this settlement to the authority, with about $56 million still expected to flow from this settlement to the authority from now until 2037. The payments from this settlement stretch out over the next 12 years. In Walmart settlement, this one's kind of the opposite of Walgreens. Instead of stretching payments out over 12 years, this is another one where the settlement included an incentive provision that allowed states that got the maximum level of participation from their local government subdivisions to receive all of their payments up front in the first effectively in the first year. It was actually made, the payments were actually came in two separate payments, but they occurred within the first 12 months that the settlement became effective. And so the authority's share of over $33.6 million from the Walmart settlement has been distributed, and any payments that Virginia expects to receive from this settlement have already been distributed. The settlement's complete. One of the most, probably the most recent completed settlement that we have entered into is with Kroger, another retail pharmacy chain. This settlement just within the last week or two, kind of the final procedural hurdle to make this settlement effective, to make the settlement go effective was cleared. The settlement will become effective on December 30th of this year, and we'll start distributing funds from that settlement early in 2025. The authorities' expected share from the Kroger settlement will be a little over $16.1 million. Those funds will be spread out from now until 2034. I have in the future payments that are shown here, for the timing of the future payments, I've noted that these are estimates because the settlement has the effective date of the settlement won't occur until later this year. The logistics for distributing the payments are still being set up, and so the precise timing of the payments are not known yet, but it will probably follow something along the lines of this schedule. And then the last group of settlements, what we call the second and third tier manufacturers and distributors. Again, these are smaller companies who are much smaller players in the opioid business than large manufacturers like Purdue or Teva, or large distributors like McKesson and Cardinal Health. And what the multi-state group is trying to do is put together a group of settlements with these companies in which the funds from these settlements will all go into a single pot that can then be distributed to the states. To date, we have settlements in principle, at least, with Hikma Pharmaceuticals, Amneal Pharmaceuticals, and Indivior that will pay approximately $3.8 million to the authority. That'll be the authority's share from these settlements. There's probably 3, maybe 4 more companies in this group of second and third tier manufacturers that the states are working towards reaching settlements with, but they haven't reached a state of finalization yet for us to be able to approximate numbers that the states will receive from these settlements yet. So they're not included, but once they have reached that state, we'll certainly update our forecasts to reflect those settlements as well. And that means that so far, based on the settlements that have been completed and implemented, or that have at least been reached in principle and are awaiting implementation, our forecast for the approximate amount that will be received by the authority from all of these settlements in the aggregate over whatever time period these funds will be paid out over, depending on the settlement. We're looking at now a total of approximately $558.5 million. Again, some of those funds have already been received. Some will be spread out over the next 5 or 10 or 12 years. But that is where things stand at the moment. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to take them now, or if you think of questions later, feel free to reach out to, you can either reach out to me directly at the Attorney General's office, or reach out to me through James Schlesman at the Attorney General's office, who's the authority's counsel, and he will relay to me any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Bashir. Does anybody from the committee have any questions for Mr. Bashir or our good friend, Mr. Schieschman? Hearing none, thank you for that report. Moving on, our next item on the agenda is hearing from our executive director, Tony McDowell. Tony, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My report is included in the packet that was emailed to you, and it's on the presentation today. So I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights. I think the most critical piece is to note that, you know, this week marks 2 years since the OAA literally opened its offices. And in that time, this board has been very busy, particularly the grants committee has awarded almost $70 million in grants to cities, counties, and state agencies. And that really puts you at the head of the line compared to all the other states in the nation in terms of getting money to the people that are sick and suffering. The team at the office has been very busy in the past year. We've got a lot of activity that you're going to hear about today and some updates that we're going to share with you. This list on the slide just kind of gives you a heads up of what those are going to do. We'll go to the next slide. We've kind of adjusted our outreach efforts this year. Whereas last year, we were all about trying to attend conferences and workshops and announce, if you will, that the OAA is open for business. We're really transitioning our efforts to more of a retail focus. In other words, going to our cities and our counties and our state agencies and literally sitting down with them face to face to have conversations about what is possible and what can be done. Having said that, we have been involved in a number of speaking engagements, both across Virginia and around the country. Charlie was given the honor of speaking at the National Association of Counties at their meeting in Tampa. And I had the opportunity to speak at a State Department event last 2 weeks ago. And so Virginia, because of the efforts of this board, Virginia and you are receiving the attention, I think, that your efforts are heavily warranted. Excellent. Just a real quick update. You'll get more information from Mr. Terrell soon, but a big effort that our team's been involved with over the course of this calendar year is data and data analytics. And Senator Gillian sponsored or wrote a budget amendment in the budget that was adopted for the current fiscal year, the state budget, that takes $4 million of the state's opioid settlement funds and earmarks it for a statewide data analytics platform. And the way the budget language is written is that the Virginia Information Technology Agency is to lead both a gap analysis and a procurement of a new statewide platform. This is going to be a soup to nuts enterprise data platform that would collect data and allow analysis and evaluate trends, what's working, what isn't. The needs analysis is underway right now. VITA has contracted with a firm called Gartner, which specializes in data analysis, and they are meeting with stakeholder organizations, including state agencies and organizations that are not necessarily state agencies, like the hospital organizations and healthcare organizations and so forth, to figure out where the data gaps are in Virginia. That gap analysis should be done January, February, and then that will support the procurement process for an RFP for a new data platform for the state. Hopefully the contract documents be put out to bid in the spring of this upcoming year. And so we're definitely making progress on that effort. In terms of outreach, we've now wrapped up 6 regional workshops. We had, I think, some very good success with this, but as we were winding up the last few, we could really sense fewer and fewer people registering, maybe a little bit broader picture questions that we're getting. And so one of the things that I'm going to recommend to the board is that we shift our focus away from these very costly and labor intensive regional workshops and instead focus on one large event, one large annual event to be held somewhere in the geographically central part of the state. And then from an outreach standpoint, we're already making contact with individual localities. And so the idea is fewer of these regional workshops and more of something that's kind of a big splash that would attract attendees from across the state. Excellent. We continue to offer our Abatement Academy, which is a series of free information sharing webinars. We've done 8 so far. We've done 7 so far this year, and we have 2 left to go. So all of these are on the website. If you've missed any, the recordings, the presentations are available. Next slide. I wanted to bring this topic to the board for consideration. This is not something that you're going to see in new business because there's no motion needed. This is more of an idea that if the board has an appetite to move forward, it can just happen. And the idea is that for the board to consider supporting or allowing a nonprofit to become, to be formed. This would be a separate organization from the OAA. It would be a foundation, it would be a 501c3 that would work alongside the OAA as a trusted partner. It would be a place where individuals and organizations can make donations towards efforts related to opioid abatement education and storytelling. Several of you were at the tour this morning at the Men and Women's Clinic, and you heard some really powerful stories. Your staff in the OAA office doesn't have the bandwidth to, I think, to collect the donations, to collect the stories, to create the awareness and the communication that I think can really drive a lot of the efforts that these grants themselves can support. And more importantly, maybe not more importantly, more specifically, we're really challenged when it comes to the business cycle of workshops and conferences, because the business model that most organizations use for workshops and conferences is you have vendors and you have sponsors. And for us to do that really puts this board in an awkward position, because who are you taking money from? When our job is to provide grants and to put money back out into the community. And so we wind up spending, very limited opioid settlement funds to pay for hotel space and AV and advertising and things of that nature, just so that we can provide education to our constituents. So the thought is to let the nonprofit do that. Let the nonprofit organize the workshop. Let the nonprofit figure out how to pay for that with vendors, with startup costs, with speaker fees, all of those types of things. And so we still have the educational component, but it doesn't present a cost to the opioid abatement fund and separates the OAA a little bit from the business cycle of running those meetings. So this is something that's done by other similar authorities. I know that many members of this board are familiar with the Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth. They have a very successful annual conference that is run by a foundation, separate foundation that simply supports what the VFHY does. The Tobacco Commission they're in the process of creating a similar organization to assist them, and there are many other examples of this. What would be required if it's nonprofit is to have its own separate board of trustees. The recommended practice would be have at least 5 members that are trustees of this board, one of which would be a member of the OAA board. Probably one would be a member of the OAA staff, and then we would look for some additional trustees that are outside of the OAA network. And so what I will be looking for from the board is, in terms of the next step, is there a consensus? Is there an appetite to continue to explore this, to try to move toward developing it? Any recommendations you might have on individuals who can serve as trustees, keeping in mind that one of the key jobs of a trustee is to help us with these sponsorships and to find the right organizations that can provide financial support for OAA activities. And we can't spend our staff time and attorney filing the papers and becoming a registered agent and that sort of thing. So if anyone knows a pro bono attorney that might be able to help us, that'd be helpful as well. So I put that out there as a topic for the board to discuss and provide feedback. Again, it's not something you need to take a vote on, but it is something that I recommend that we move toward. Excellent. My final slide is just a heads up on the meetings that we have planned for next year. There are 4 grants committee meetings, 2 board meetings. We have dates for the grants committee figured out. We will nail down the dates for the full board meeting. It kind of depends on what locations that we could choose. So we'll work with you on that. But this is sort of your sneak peek of next year's work plan for the board. And before I turn it back over to the chairman, it's great to be in Abingdon. I love being in Southwest Virginia. Please thank the mayor for the city.
Thank you.
And I know that Cindy gets a lot of accolades for all the work that she's done with communities in Southwest Virginia, but if we can't give all the credit to Cindy, we have a special consultant who actually lives and works in Cindy's office. It's a four-legged special consultant whose name is Speckles. And so we have a name tag for our other team members. So in front of the board, I'd like to present this.
Full support.
There's, I think, discussion.
Okay. So hearing that report, does anybody have any questions or want to discuss the foundation that our executive director mentioned? Do you have any comments, questions?
Only, question, I guess, that I asked, Tony, is what plans do you have to, discuss this further? Will there be formal discussion? Do you want to, just have us come to you individually? Is there a plan to kind of, work on that issue later?
The hope for today was to introduce the idea. It is something that I think if we're gonna do it, it would make sense to begin moving quickly towards doing it. And so I would simply ask the board to provide me any comments that you have, your immediate comments, and then between now and the end of the year, we can have the additional conversations.
I think it's a great idea. Oh, man, else,
Yeah.
seems like no brainer.
I'll go ahead and throw out there that I have been working on similar problems or similar challenges and opportunities lately, both through VASAM and through collaboration with through APAL, the collaboration between VHCS and Medical Society of Virginia. A big element of the APAL project and a big part of the will of VASAM is to offer as much education as possible. The toolkit development project ended up being mostly done by the Wright Center in ECU, and so there's still a lot of desire to help educate and support the OAA among other efforts to educate our colleagues and the community about addiction, about the opioid crisis, and about what the sport is doing. So I'm certainly interested in and definitely in favor of helping something like this, developing something like this.
Thank you. I will say almost every organization that I've worked in my career has had some sort of foundation that works alongside it to provide this type of support. And so I wouldn't bring this recommendation forward if it wasn't sort of a tried and true practice.
Any other comments?
Just one quick question, because I've come from that same world Tony's come from, where you'll have library foundations, school foundations that are tied very much what a government or quasi-government entity is attempting to achieve. But I'm wondering, since this is such a large problem nationwide, is there an opportunity maybe associated with an already existing nonprofit that might be able to allow us to launch more quickly, or is that something that might not have as much cooperation with the OAA as forming our own?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So the idea was that the incorporation documents, the bylaws, the articles that would legally form this organization so that they can get filed with the C3, is that its sole purpose is to support the opioid abatement authority. It's really the only reason that it exists, so they could be very specific.
Similar to a library foundation, Parks and Rec foundation.
Correct.
Okay.
It's really just a different way for Virginians and Virginia companies to support the efforts of this authority without intermingling those funds with the authority's funds.
And Mike have.
Fantastic.
I just voice support for it. I think it's a great idea. I know the Sheriff's Office, we have a foundation that we created. There's things that I'm obligated to do with the funds that the city gives me for court operations, jail operations, those kind of things. But the foundation allows me to have someone be in control of it. Camp Code, which is all about disrupting Domestic violence, children involved in domestic violence. So I think it's a perfect idea. And, you know, when we think about all the people that have lost to addiction or overdoses, there are families out there that are probably looking for things to try to, as legacy to their loved one lost, and it's going to be a way of doing that. I don't think the OAA can set the mission and be part of how do we stop. I think it's a perfect idea.
Any other comments? Well, hearing that, I do feel like there's consensus on the board's moving forward. You want that forward motion?
No, sir, that's fine, but we won't make any formal steps
Okay.
without this board's approval, but we will be bringing it back to you.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Tony? Hearing none. Next on the agenda is the treasurer's report. Mr. Holland, unfortunately, couldn't join us today, but we have Adam Rossatelli, who's going to be presenting on his behalf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. Next slide, please. So this is the update on the estimated settlement payments and budget, and Mr. Bashir gave a pretty comprehensive overview of this, but this would be the totals by settling company pie chart. You've all seen this before, right? So again, $558.5 million through FY 2039, and as mentioned, Purdue is essentially been zeroed out right now because there is no line number to be used, given that it was that ruling was reversed. So once we have a new line, we'll go ahead and include that back into the total. Excellent.
And just let me stop you. That number will be substantial. I would anticipate that number is going to be a large.
Yes, sir. Previously it was about $57 million. To the OAA, correct. The OAA share is $57 million.
Okay.
All right, so this is just a snapshot of the OA's cash flow. So you can see, as of July 1st, the beginning fund balance in the opioid abatement fund was $119.2 million. Through November 6th, there were $29.5 million in cash inflows net of adjustments. So fiscal year to date cash outflows, including actual statement of grant distributions and administrative costs, total $4.6 million. Resulting in $144.1 million in cash on hand. And so obviously there are a lot of outstanding distributions that are going to be made. That number actually is from the expenditure side is going to increase over the coming months to be more reflective of the actual ones that have been made. And I'll mention too, some of these, there's a handout. Some of these numbers are kind of small and hard to see in there. If you'd like to follow along with the handout. So next slide, please. So now transitioning to the projected funds available for grant awards. And these columns in the table kind of correspond with the bar charts, the bars you can see down there below. So looking at this graph, which depicts again the information contained in that table above, you can see the estimated annual settlement payments for each year, which is that blue line that you see, and then the annual budget expenditures for each category represented as those stacked bar charts. So noticeably, there were very few expenditures, as you know, in FY 23 relative to revenues received. And as you're aware, this is due to the OA just becoming operational, kind of creating more organizational infrastructure and so forth. And then working with cities and counties to be put in a posture to plan for and then receive those funds. So grant awards increased substantially in FY 24 and FY 25, with over 35 million distributed in 24 and 36 million in awards and expenditures in FY 25. So this is in relation to the estimated settlement payment revenues through FY 26, which is the next year, of $179 million. So what this does is it results in a projected carry forward balance of $106.3 million going into FY 26. 31 million of that is attributed to the individual distribution share that goes to cities and counties. And the remaining balance is kind of spread over multiple years, consistent with the board's adopted measured budget approach. So that's why you see that kind of blip. FY 26 pops like that, because those individual distribution funds carry over from year to year and are fully available to the cities and counties. I don't really have my pie check there. That's fine. So this is now looking at the OAA's budget, including the administrative budget, a break out of that sort of stuff. So you can see that adjustments to the budgets reflect the newest estimated settlement payment amounts, as well as any carry forward amounts from the prior year balances budgeted for this with the board's adopted long-term financial plan. Looking at the table, and I know you can't, that is really unclear for whatever reason, but if you were to reference the handout that you've got, it made it clear. So you focusing on the OAA's administrative costs as a share of the budget, you can see that the current fiscal year costs have risen to 6.2%. So that's that middle column at FY25. That represents a 1.5 percentage point increase over the prior year. This is almost entirely attributed to a number of one-time costs that are occurring in this fiscal year. And it's related to the development of that new grants management system we're working on to give localities the opportunity to transact with the OAA in a web-based format, as well as to retain financial information in a more secure way. In addition, there are a few other proposed one-time administrative expenses related to hiring an audit compliance consultant, which I'll review momentarily, as well as an events coordinator. So after these one-time costs, you can see the one-time costs below under that Y25 column. Once those have been completed, the OA's ongoing administrative will go back to between 3% and 5% moving forward, essentially going on. So, next slide, please. Okay, so briefly discussing the local audit specifications related to opioid abatement funds and proposal to the OAA to retain an audit consultant. So as you recall, the Appropriation Act included language directing the Auditor of Public Accounts to include in its annual local audit specifications that independent certified public accounts ensure that each city and county comply with the statutory requirements regarding the use of OAA funds. Given that this is a new requirement for cities and counties and their independent auditors, as well as kind of the unique complexities surrounding the OAA grants themselves, OAA staff is proposing the one-time use of unrestricted funds to retain services like a professional CPA firm. So this firm, in consultation with the OAA and the Auditor of Public Accounts, who we've spoken with and has kind of endorsed this effort to assist in this, they would develop an audit standards document that would go to the auditing community as well as the cities and counties, so they can explain the local auditing that goes into the annual comprehensive financial reports, as well as OAA auditing, clarifying things such as, what is an indirect expense versus administrative costs, the plan team, all those sorts of things, because there's a little bit of confusion going on right now among the 133 recipients as to how we're supposed to report on these items. So that is a proposal.
And we really, we put $100,000 in the budget for that if the board approves it, but until we do a procurement process, which would be competitive, we're not sure what the cost of developing this would be. I think it would be well over $100,000.
Right. Yeah, actually, the previous slide had the one-time cost. I think that it's so. I believe, that concludes the treasurer's report. I'd be happy to answer any questions and then we may have this.
Any questions for Mr. Hotel? We need to make a motion.
That'll be under later.
Next on the agenda, we're going to get a legislative update again. Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is going to be really brief. So this is just a review of the core funds. And if you recall, so 15% of all funds received by Virginia go to the Commonwealth, known as the Commonwealth share. And these non-OAA state funds are deposited to the Commonwealth Opioid Abatement and Remediation Core Fund, which was established by legislation carried by Senate in 2023. And those go through the state appropriation process. So chapters 1 and 2, which are the appropriation acts that made prior fiscal year FY24 and set the budget for FY25 and 26, include a total of $35.9 million in these core fund appropriations to state agencies for a variety of abatement purposes. So this is of the approximately $65.9 million in deposits to the core fund to date, and the roughly $170 million in total estimated payments that the Commonwealth is projected to receive through FY 2039. So taking a quick glance at this, you can see, I mean, the table kind of delineates that. You can see that there is a total of $1.4 billion in the prior year. The actual expenditures are below in the corresponding year. And taking a step back, the reason I'm explaining this to you is because there was budget language that was included that requires the OAA to actually report on the use of the quote. And so this more specific information in years end will be included as an addendum in our annual report explaining how this is used. So that's essentially why we're talking about the core fund, but it's also kind of reflective of the other pot of money that's being used in the appropriation process for the same thing that the OAA engaged. That includes my legislative update. Well, I will say,
talk about all the bills I've passed.
yeah. We did. Good job. Yeah.
You didn't care.
What's that? I did, and that's right. I did do that. But I will say we will keep the board apprised of legislative updates as we go into general assembly session and you know, as we do routinely in the year. So I appreciate your time.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add one note, you notice that on the FY 25 column, and so the current fiscal year, there's $19.4 million appropriated to these agencies for core expenditures. And the amount that's actually been spent as of last week was just under 27,000. So there's a lot of money in the system right now. We've got about 7 months left.
I can say that.
Tony,
Sheriff Perrin.
Sheriff Perrin. Yes, sorry.
Go ahead.
You say, I see only 26,000 spent, and of particular interest to me, DCJS, has $2 million for jail-based stuff. How do jails get to that? Do we
so that there is
contact DCJS?
those funds are being administered by Department of Criminal Justice Services in cooperation with the Virginia Association of Regional Jails. And they have issued out guidance, application process, and we'll be making awards from that fund.
Yeah, that's creative legislation.
Yes.
We can't forget about all the sheriffs.
That's correct.
Any other questions? The level of frustration, I think that I have is what we all share, that these dollars, should be spent and not reserved. So I encourage you to contact your people and encourage them to allocate those funds into our communities and into their programming. Delegate Sewell and I worked on some great legislation that is sitting there and not being effectively instrumented because of that.
If there's anything that can be done from the city of Bowman, please let me know.
Absolutely.
So that we will work with our folks, Preston, Brian, who I'm sure.
Yes. Any other comments? All right, next up, we're going to hear from Dr. Thomason from the Grants Committee.
Thank you. Since our last grants committee report made on June 14th, 2024, we've had 2 meetings. 3 counting today, but we're going to talk about the past 2, and I'll tell you about our actions. Committee held an in-person meeting with a virtual option at the Prince Edward Rescue Squad in Farmville, Virginia, and that was on August 2nd. We received an update from our executive director introducing new staff, reviewing the abatement academy sessions and in-person workshops for the rest of the calendar year, and information on the VC Award and Creative Toolkit of abatement programs for cities and counties. We also received an update from the Director of Operations that included the current grant activities, updates to policies, requirements, terms and conditions, and a summary of all the proposals and amendments received and the recommendations up for consideration. That time, we approved awards for 32 projects across 16 state agencies, and that totaled $9.1 million. And we approved $728,000 in revised carry forward funds for the city and county awards. We also approved updates to terms and condition requirements for grant recipients. We held an all virtual meeting on September 23rd. And again, we received an update from the Director of Operations that included one amendment for a city-county cooperative partnership award. We approved the amendment to change the funding source of one partner's matching funds from direct distribution to individual distribution, thus awarding $75,000 in individual distribution funds. Note the amendment did not modify the scope or the competitive amount of the award. Our next grants meeting is all virtual and is scheduled for December 6th, and we will consider recommendations for amendments to current awards for cities and counties, as well as state agencies, and the new individual distribution awards for cities and counties. And that concludes my report.
Any questions for Dr. Thomas?
Hearing none, next up, we'll hear Charlie for our operations report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a brief general operations update. Probably our most exciting update is that our grants portal is out and live. You're hearing different bits about that over time. A lot of work that started back in January and getting things together, and then we launched. Everything was open on about October 3rd, along with the current grants, city and county grant period. So all the applications, awards, reports, everything's and all communication is going to happen through this platform, both of them, and we'll be working the applications through that. So I'm going to cut out a lot of administrative time we spend on putting things together and back and forth with our awardees. And so each city, county, state agency can have up to 5 users, and we've hosted 2 webinars that have also been posted online for people as resources. We have a quick user guide, and a number of other things. Matt will talk a little bit more about some details on the portal in just a minute. And we have continually throughout this grant period, we're going to have these kind of open support, either grant questions, taking it from paper to a system, or system operation questions where we can just provide live support. And if there's any good Q&A that happens during there, we post that as well on the website to try to provide as many resources as we can with it. City and county reporting. Cities and counties have completed their carry forward true ups, and those letters confirming the award amounts have gone out to them. And so if some of you remember, in our very first round of grants, we awarded a number of planning grants. Some were cooperative, some were individual, and we did another round of individual in December of last year. That first group had like a 2-year time frame to get things done for people to build capacity and put together things. And so because we're over a year past when that started, we only know like 1 or 2 years. We're going to do some progress reporting where we kind of go, hey, where are you with this? And what could be spent with money? How far are you coming along with the plan? So we can provide some support if we need to help keep those things moving along. And as Tony mentioned, we continue to be looked to as a resource. I felt special when they asked me to be a featured expert on a National Academy of State Health Policy call on supporting communities and local jurisdictions through outreach. So we still get a lot of questions. I've had conversations in the last couple of months with people in Kentucky and Ohio. Just want to know what were new people with administration changes, new people coming into roles. So what are you guys doing? How are you handling this and that kind of thing? So it's been nice to be able to help. Statewide awards to date, city and county awards. We do at least somewhere for our first set of 2 award application periods. We've received applications including 106 of the 133 cities and counties. That doesn't mean all of them are necessarily drawing down individual funds or even contributing anything other than a name on a piece of paper to the project. But there has been at least some level of interaction there. We've awarded 100 of 110 applications that came through, which I think is a pretty fantastic rate. We're trying to work with them and then work with us to get these things done. 46 million, 92 projects for cities and counties currently active until December 6th, it sounds like. State agency awards, 18 agencies and 48 projects across 2 periods. 36 awarded, 20 million, 32 projects currently active. And so Tony talked about 2 years since we know with us opening our office and that kind of thing, but really between, it was like April 21st when the first grant period closed, and August 2nd, when we did the second round of state agency awards, it's about 15 and a half months that from applications coming in to award decisions being made to get to that almost $70 million. And that we funded 858 projects. And I think Tony's right, that really puts us ahead of a lot of others. They're still trying to figure out how to even do, especially at the community level thing. Many states have done big regional or statewide projects, but a lot of them are still struggling with how to get to. Next slide. So as of last week, we have 46 gold standard cities and counties. It's where it's a one-time opt-in down for them, and they can now file that through the system. We've actually had 2 or 3 come in since the system went live. And if they do not file that, the system will not allow them to try and draw down gold standard funds for any application. But once it's in there, it's done and it's live, unless they call and tell us that they send us a letter and tell us they don't want to be part of it anymore. So we hope this is growing. I'm going to be talking some about the gold standard as well as some other projects at Virginia Association of Counties Conference on Monday on a panel with the county administrator from Dickinson County, how they have the Wildwood Health and Wellness Center, and one of the supervisors from Enrico for their kinship navigator and their pregnant parenting women programs to be in front of a lot of city and county officials, a lot of county officials, primary elected officials. And we're looking forward to kind of really get that information. And we're going to be doing a little demystifying of the gold standard. There seems to be some incorrect assumptions that we hear from people. They out in cities and counties not to go into it. So I'm going to try to kind of clarify some of that and get a little more, hopefully push to get some more. The next slide, it's kind of the image ended up a little blurry at that time. So we have developed with actually one of our interns, Mary Ann Keenan, put this together. So this is like kind of a recognition, almost like a resolution that we wanted to use to kind of take out to boards of supervisors and city council meetings and kind of have we're primarily our outreach team presenting this. And we're trying to get this little kind of competition. Well, they're gold standards, city and county, why aren't we? And so this gives them the ability to put something up and brag about it and get it in a public meeting because they are really making that extra commitment that some of the others maybe haven't made yet. So
You're gonna give out ribbons and bacon to all the counties.
I thought about that, yes, yes. One of the 18 flags that you can put up, yeah. That maybe next year, perhaps, I thought about that, so. Next, we'll have an update on our reach to cities and counties. Next slide. Just as a kind of reminder, here's our map breakup. You can see in the purple, that's where we are, and that's Cindy's area. And then in the green up top, that's Kat's area, and the red to the right is Jenny's area. The little kind of light blue in the middle is what we call the headquarters area. That's usually some staff in the office that we were able to kind of take care of most of those. And then we're still recruiting. We went through one recruitment and we're able to find a successful candidate for this kind of central region. Part of it was some marketing issues. People thought it was traditional central Virginia, like Richmond, Chesterfield. And so we're looking for people in Charlottesville or Lynchburg or Danville. So we are now doing a recruitment. We've made some contacts with people at the Virginia Association of Service Boards Conference. We've got flyers we'll be handing out at the VACO conference as well, trying to find people that have the right kind of background for this kind of thing, is working with governments and stuff. So from here, yes. From here, I'm going to let each one of the resource coordinators kind of give you a quick update on what's been going on with them in their regions. Next slide.
Oh, that's me on first. I know you have the slides, so I'll just kind of summarize that. It's been a really great year. It's been a busy year in the Western region. I know you guys saw lots of applications come through this last round. I think Tony summed it up really well earlier. I think we started off the day with the tour, was the greatest way to start off the day was that tour with men and women and hearing that recovery testimony, because it takes everything we're all sitting here doing and make it very real, especially the young ladies folks. So just the work that you have. Thank you to the board. Because all that we run to you and all this work and you guys do all the work you do to bring it to fruition. It's really impacting us. So, I think Senator Food and I were talking once and something he said stuck with me. It's, I get to do this work. And that's really stuck to me. It's so impactful. And, as you can see, by outreach all 32, we have about 29 that are part of at least something. As Charlie mentioned, that doesn't mean they have put their money in yet, but they're at least part of something name on paper. So the next part of really trying to get busy with that is really working with them along, like getting out to those localities, getting out with ideas about how you can spend your individual money, use it as a match. What's going to impact your community the best? What are your gaps and where do you see it? Been really busy coordinating those relationships and connections, like how can you get with your CSB or your health department, your DSS, where are your gaps and working together as a team. That will also help with sustainability on after community impact. Just to highlight, there were so many projects for the region, our region, it was hard to pick out, but I kind of just went down the line of things I think would be really impactful. Obviously, we were at Men and Women, this morning, so I didn't put that one on there, but the Wildwood Health and Wellness Center, that's gonna be in Dickinson County. It's the Wildwood, it's the Pure the Wellness Center, but they also have 2 treatment facilities coming online that they're going outside of this funding, as well as working with their industrial development folks. And it's just gonna be so impactful from the whole continuum and getting folks back into the workforce and building that workforce. I think what they're doing up there is tremendous, so keep an eye on what they're doing. The restoration housing for women and infants, that's in Roanoke City, and I put that up there because here's a gap, and I'm so excited for this project, and they came up with a ton of funding and matching dollars as well. This is for women and infants. And this is so hard to find still, so this is filling a gap. I'm really excited to see where they go and if it can be replicated across the state. We still definitely need things for our women and our children, so they can be separated. The C-Corps program is in Russell County, between Russell and Tazewell. That's a 90-day community residential program for folks coming out of incarceration. They actually have a contract with the Virginia Department of Corrections. So it's a one-time getting them up and running with capital costs. They actually opened in July. They're open and going and have residents and already having them out working and already seeing an impact. And Tony and I toured the facility in September and they did a phenomenal job. If you ever want it in that area, come up and they'll let you come and tour. What they've done with that facility to make it welcoming for those folks, reduce that trauma, get folks back into the community. And as we all know, they need that little bit of time to re-enter. The Appalachian Center for Hope, you're going to tour tomorrow, so I won't say too much about it. That's a Smith County project, and it's going to be pretty much under construction for the next year, but if we get some more information about that tomorrow, and some blueprints about what that's going to look like. So just to continue to get out there and through the region and meet with sub-recipients, county administrators, city managers. And I do have to take this 1 second to say, none of the outreach can happen without every single staff member at this table. I want to thank them personally at this meeting. We constantly get questions. Is it IT? Kara keeps me on the road going and busy. Charlie's in operations and James for the legal and Tony with his guidance. We constantly get questions and I'm back like, I got this question, who can help me? So this team makes outreach roll, and that's why it's successful as a team effort. It's not one person, it's truly a team. So thank you, guys.
Charlie, if I can, just, Mr. Chairman, Cindy has a separate assignment. It's a statewide role she plays for us. This board has awarded grants to Department of Education, Virginia Tech Extension Service, and the Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth, all related to prevention programs for kids. And we ask that they coordinate their efforts with each other. And Cindy is the coordinator. So she convenes routine virtual meetings of those organizations. And it's amazing what they've been able, how they've been able, those 3 organizations have been able to help each other in their combined efforts. And Cindy has made that happen.
And we've added the Attorney General's office to it now, their outreach program.
Yeah, and I just had an email from their Olivia that does work at the AG office in this area. They're doing a bus tour with the coaches versus overdoses. So he's on our call with that and already reached out to the Department of Ed who's on the call. How can we work together with that and not be duplicative? And then Virginia Tech with their extension is working on video and increase their number of schools are in through that coordination. And it was Tony's idea and it turned out to be just great. They're working.
You never knew state agencies like working together.
And help them to the part of that as well. And they're part of it for daily doses and just a huge campaign. That's what they do well. So it's really well. They're working great together. So, yeah. So, thank you.
will be updating soon. So I have 35 localities. I've connected with 20 of them. 16 have, grants with us. And the feedback that I've been getting, and also the other coordinators, is the need for jail-based programs, youth programs, and mobile units. So there's 2 stood up in my region for the mobile unit, jail-based, and there's just 1 with the youth education that's in Gloucester that puts a prevention and treatment clinician in Gloucester High School. And we have actually 7 pending applications, all of which are Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, but they're all geared towards the youth. And I think it's August of 2025, they're hoping to go live with the regional recovery high school. So that's what's happening. But I also would like to follow up with Cindy about the team. Like I appreciate the opportunity to work for such an outstanding organization, and these are all remarkable individuals. We should be very proud. So next is the Northern region. As everyone knows, my name is Kathy Craig. I will also be updating the photograph. I have 31 localities in Northern Virginia, and to date, I've sent outreach to all 31 of them, and I've had direct responses from 27 of them. Out of all of those 4 localities that I have not reached, at least 2 of them are also still in some sort of cooperative program. Aside from that, we have 26 that are currently part of an OAA award. That's individual distributions. Many of them are in multiple cooperative partnerships, and there are also a few planning grants. The localities all in the northern portion have expressed some commonalities, and that is needs for programs for youth, warm handoff programs to bridge the gaps between various different programs from jail-based to community-based. More programs in the jails for medication for opioid use disorder and recovery courts expansion, and that includes adding peer recovery support systems to those recovery courts. Some of the projects that I have selected to highlight for the northern region, one is with Stafford County as the fiscal agent, and that is in partnership with Fredericksburg City, Caroline County, King George County, and Spotsylvania County. This is their mobile MAT and their support for their Sunshine House. So this is a program that is expanding their mobility within the region and those specific localities for mobile medication assisted treatment, as well as expanding their beds within their Sunshine Lady House for their crisis stabilization center. Then you have the Culpeper County Co-op, and Culpeper County is the fiscal agent, and they are in partnership with Madison County, Orange County, Faulkner County, and Rappahannock County. And this is done through their Encompass Community Supports, which is their CSP. And this is where they created and established their peer overdose response unit. The team went live in January 2024. Everyone's hired, and they have been doing phenomenal work in the area and doing mobile outreach and crisis response in the area. Then you have Frederick County, who is the fiscal agent, and they're in partnership with Clark County, Faulkner County, Winchester City, and this is for the Northwest Regional Jail Medical Medication for Opioid Use Disorder program that they are initiating. It's a new program. It's not started yet, but they are making headway to get underway in the next year or 2. And then the last one, I'm sure everyone is aware of and heard of before, is with Fairfax County as the fiscal agent, and they're in partnership with Alexander City, Arlington County, Loudoun County, Prince William County, and this is to establish their adolescent treatment center and STD residential program, which is desperately needed in Virginia. We are sending much of our youth out of state for resident treatment.
All right, so a couple of quick updates, city county annual reports. So I talked about this a little bit during the grants committee meeting, but for every grant or award that we give out, there has to be at least an annual report talking about financial status, program status, performance measure status, and that's embedded in our terms and conditions. And so they have to give us a narrative on how the project's doing and address if there's any challenges and how they've worked around those challenges. what is the impact that the program's having to the community? And how are they doing on sustainability? And is there any kind of specific issues with their, or comments on their expenditures they need to make? We get them to send us a copy of their general ledger, which is, accounting terms for like kind of the transactions of the funds, so we can kind of have a high level view of what's going on and see if there's anything that doesn't look like it makes sense to do some follow-up on. It's also something that helps us when we get to the point of doing kind of site visits and performance audits, that we can ask to like see some invoices or things and do some like validation. And I think it may even play into some of the APA's plans having, when these external auditors come in, they should be audited to these annual reports, how the things will get done, so. And then they have to report their funds based on revenue source and as well as the actual performance measures that they achieved versus what was performed, and their expenditures by budget category. So I mentioned we had all but 2, and 61% that were in full compliance. We have 18 where staff's following up for just a couple of just missing administrative items. We have 21% of them where staff's got to take a few extra steps. We got to get some clarifications. Maybe their answers to a couple of questions will clear this stuff up. There was overall with the city and county clerks, there was no big clear non-compliant issues. More just some things that we believe there's an answer to. We just didn't see it in the initial report. And then after these are finalized, they will eventually get kind of an official report or gets assessment of the report. And they'll end up in one of 3 statuses: compliant, which means everything's great; substantially compliant, which means most everything's great. They may have a few small issues. Really, we think more administrative type of items. And we need to we want to see these things kind of cleaned up, within the next year. But it's nothing, nothing that we feel like we need to pull funding or anything. Not compliant means they've done something with the money they weren't supposed to. They violated terms and conditions or something like that. Non-compliant is going to usually develop some type of performance improvement plan and may impact their ability to get any additional awards until those situations are remedied, and or funds may have to be returned to that piece. So we're hoping not to have to go down that road, but we do have to kind of have that available. So. And we're hoping that definitely through the system for next year, we're hoping for this year too, to take all those performance measure actuals and roll them up and consolidate them as a conclusion in our annual report. Right. And then also, next slide, I mentioned with the state agencies, we're in the middle of carry forward reporting. Next slide, please. I think I talked a little earlier with the grants committee, but carry forward and true up, you apply and you say, I think I'm going to have this much left that I'm going to need to carry over. Get to the end of the period, you go, well, actually, this is how much I've got left, and this is what I need to do with it. And so we get that level set and see if it needs to have any actions or not. The grants committee did approve us in the future to be able to take care of some of these items administratively if they're de minimis amounts, or things that are just happening that are not really changing the context of the project, just moving some things around to better fit where things ended up. So. But the carry forward report is similar to the annual report. It's just kind of a smaller picture that gives us some narrative stuff, what's generating it. Let's see that ledger and what do you want to do? What do you want to do with the money? Make sure it's something that's approved in scope. 22 projects, 50% full compliance, 50 we're having to do some follow-up. Again, this is the first time any of the localities or state agencies have done this. So coming in the 50 and 60% where we come in right to begin with, it's pretty good. Based on my compliance background. So I have a feeling things will be much higher next year. And then after they're reviewed, they'll get a final update on their award, and if need be, there'll be other grants committee actions to write some things. And their annual reports are due on December 9th. And so update on the grant application cycle. We are open. This is our 3rd round, which doesn't seem like it's been long enough to do that, but 3rd round of city county applications. We have a couple of grants committee meetings scheduled. So the December 6th and February 21st meetings will consider like awards for this year or amendments that affect grants that are current in this year. And then the one on May 23rd will be for the next fiscal year 26. It's upcoming. Everything will be coming in through the grants portal. We have received 9 applications for individual distribution, and we're working with some of the fiscal agents for cooperatives on some amendments. Some of them we may be able to administratively approve, and some of them we're trying to figure out how to get them through the parameters we put in the system. Those will all be up to December 6th. State agency window is coming soon, maybe sooner than it feels like, and that'll be opening up in March. For grants committee to consider proposals in August. And so lastly, Matt's gonna close it out and give you some updates and you can see some, what the grants management portal looks like. Matt is our business analyst, has been the primary lead working with the vendor and keeping all the rest of us managed so that we give our inputs and approvals and make sure things are working the way they're supposed to. And so this project definitely would not be at its deliverable level if it wasn't for Matt's efforts.
So first off, I want to give a special thank you to the team. They all helped me with user acceptance testing, which was a big lift for all of them, especially Sharika, because we had about a week and a half to 2 weeks to enter in all the FY24, FY25 applications in the system manually. So that was a daunting task, and she kept me from crying in a corner. Yeah, so here's an overview of our portal features. As Charlie mentioned, they can do their individual distributions and cooperative partnerships through them. The gold standard is part of the individual application. They will have to be asked whether they want to become a part of that. Their annual reporting is available. They also can look up any of their historical applications or any forms or anything, any type of communication with them. Their direct distribution reporting is a part of the individual distribution. And for those who are partners for cooperative, they also can do their distribution reporting separately on there. Their estimated funds lookup is available on there as well. It's tied to each city or county account. Here's a quick overview of what it looks like when they log in. So they can see as a step-by-step process where their applications are on those tabs under the word applications there. So they can see whether we're reviewing it, it's signed, awarded, or closed. They also can see all the funds that they've received to date, as well as how many applications, opportunities, and how many applications they near their due date. When they click on the grants management section, they will see a list of any types of grants that are available to them, as well as any open dates and due dates. They also can kind of read through the purpose. We have a section there, kind of help describe what types of grants they are. This is their historical documents section, so they can look through everything they have there. They can download the documents and PDFs. They can also filter by copy. And here's their estimated funds lookup tool. So even if they are not a part or have not opted into the gold standard, we do have that available for them to see. So they can see how much would be available to them if they did opt into it. Also, as soon as any applications are awarded, or for direct distributions, anything is pledged as a match for an application, that shows up there. So it's a real-time table for them. And then lastly is the cooperative partner dashboard. So for those who are a partner on a cooperative partnership, since the fiscal agent is the one who creates and does all of the entering for the application, we created this for them so they can view any part or applications they're a part of. They can view the documents and upload any documents that they need to if anything being requested of them. And here are some upcoming features. We do have the state agency, some historical things in there, but we do need to manually enter in all their applications so they be ready for them. Also, the public dashboard we began working on about 2 weeks ago, I believe. And so that's going to be real exciting. Coming out, there's a lot of data that's being captured in these applications. So that will be available for everybody. Go live with that. Budget alignment process. So if we award what is different than what is requested, they can go back in and align their expenditures with what was awarded. And the carry forward true-up process that Charlie mentioned earlier, that will be available in the system. And then there's also various smaller enhancements to increase efficiency. We did our best to get it aligned right, but people find ways to break things all the time, and that's good. Yep.
And I think one note on the dashboard, we're hoping for that to be out in the spring. And one of the features of that is that, there's the lookup tool we've had, it's PDF, and then it's been Excel based, something Adam worked really hard on. But it will be that same thing that they see in the system right now will be available publicly on that dashboard. So any citizen can, can go in, any member of the public can see what those dollars are that they are in. Thanks, Matt. And that ends the operations report.
Any questions for Charlie? Thank you very much. Now comes the time in our agenda that we invite members of the public to address the board. We ask the speakers limit their comments to 3 minutes. Are there any speakers who would like to address the board online or in? All right, so new business. The state code and our bylaws require that we conduct an election of officers annually. We will now conduct nominations and elections. Elections to be effective immediately. We filling the position of chair, vice chair, treasurer, and secretary. Any member of the board can nominate himself or another member for these positions, and I encourage participation from all members. Nominations do not require a second, however, any number of persons may second the nomination just to show their support of that nominee. With that, I'll turn it over to Tony for the nomination process for the office of chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nominations are now open for the office of chair. Accepting any nominations for the office of chair.
I would like to nominate Senator Williams to be chair.
The first, the second.
You can almost keep going, it's like a third. Yeah.
Yes.
Second.
Are there any other nominations for anyone else for the office of chair? Okay, all those in favor of Senator Hillian to be elected as chair, please vote at this time by saying aye. Chairman, you've been reelected.
Right. Great. Thank you. And I do take great joy in this as a gift, being able to chair this and work with each one of you. Many of you were appointed by a former administration, but I've made it a point to lobby for you to be reappointed. Because in my opinion, this is not a political board. This is a board that is helping all Virginians, and it should continue to be that. So I'm glad that we're all together and we're continuing the good work that we started just a few years ago. So nominations are now in order for vice chair. Do I hear the nominations for vice chair? We have a nomination for Dr. Thomason for vice chair. Do I have a second? Second. We have a nomination to second. Any other nominations from the board for vice chair? Hear none. All in favor of re-electing Dr. Thomason as vice chair, say aye. Aye. All right, any opposed? All right, congratulations to Dr. Thomason as
Thank
the
you.
elected.
Love you all and keep doing this great work.
Nominations are now in order for the office of treasurer. Nominations do not require a second, however, any number of persons may second a nomination just to show their support of the nominee.
I will nominate, the Honorable James Holland.
Do we hear a second? Second. I have a motion and I have a nomination in a second. Any other nominations from the board for office of treasurer? Hearing none, we'll now close the nominations. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, congratulations, Dr. Holland, to be re-elected as treasurer. Nominations are now in order to the office of secretary. All right, we have a nomination for Mr. Spencer to be re-elected as office of secretary. Right here, a second. Second. We have a nomination and a second. Do I hear any other nominations for office of secretary? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, congratulations, Mr. Spencer. We're just keeping it all the same. All right, congratulations to everyone. The second item of new business to consider amendments to the FY25 budget. Mr. Rosatelli has summarized the staff recommendations for those amendments. At this time, I'll entertain a motion. I think the motion would be that I would entertain would be that we would take the staff recommendations for those amendments to the FY25. I'll make a motion. All right, we have a motion. Do you hear a second? Second. We have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. That motion carries. Third item of new business to consider is authorization for the executive director to procure professional services for the creation of an audit standard guidance for cities and counties. And as we previously heard, the minutes just approved by the board include the budgeting of $100,000 to support the procurement in FY 25. At this time, I'll entertain that motion.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, like sign. That motion carries. The fourth item of new business is to consider authorization for executive director to procure professional services for statewide opioid abatement conference planning. The minutes just approved by the board include budgeting of $50,000 to support this procurement. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for that.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. That motion carries. So I'm gonna do this motion now. Sure. Go back one. Go back one. Okay. So I have a motion that may have a little discussion, hopefully not, and hopefully maybe it will have some good discussion with it. But recently, we've been hearing very positive news about the decreases in the number of fatal overdoses in 2023 and 2024. And this has been taking place around the country and in Virginia. And while this is great news, it's important that we keep in mind that while the rate of overdoses is decreasing, the total number of overdoses is still very high. Worse, some communities are continuing to see a steady increase each year in the number of fatal overdoses. So in other words, we can't ever let up. The nature of the opioid overdose crisis has changed. And whereas the crisis in Virginia was initially fueled by the overprescribing and misuse of opioid medications, the majority of fatal overdoses in Virginia now include fentanyl and increasingly mixed with stimulants such as cocaine and methamphetamines. For this reason, we are seeing the concentration of opioid overdoses shifting from rural to more urban areas. From 2019 to 2023, the rate of fatal overdose deaths per 100,000 population in Virginia increased by 59%. But that was the total for all Virginians. When we look at different subsets of Virginians, we see an increase in the overdose deaths much higher in Black Virginians during that time frame. So, for instance, in Chesapeake City, we see an increase of 426%. Norfolk City, we see an increase of 365%. Portsmouth City, 300%. Richmond City, 229%. Henrico County, 167%. Newport News City, 114%. And Petersburg City, 103%. So, for all those reasons, I'd like to challenge this board and our staff to think about what we can do to provide more support to those communities in Virginia where the overdose trend is increasing each year. And particularly, I would like to suggest that we consider a special grant program designed to address the disparities in overdose deaths among Black Virginians. My motion is that this board direct the executive director to develop and present to the grants committee for final approval a special grant program designed to address the unique challenge of rising opioid overdose death rates among Black Virginians. And furthermore, that the board approve an amount not to exceed $3 million, and that amount is very negotiable, from OAA unrestricted funds be approved to cover the cost of these special grants in the fiscal year 2026.
Motion, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
That is right.
Any discussion?
In American neighborhoods to hopefully eradicate discouragement and their addiction.
Okay. Any discussion?
We've been concerned about this, this issue at BASIM, and have met a number of people who have advised us to try to help fight the stigma against medication-assisted treatment in the Black community, and suggested that focus it in our messaging go to the Black churches. So a place to really sort of anchors the community and, has a big influence on, what's considered, good advice and, an approach to a serious problem. And so I really appreciate this, this motion, this idea. I'd love to support and see it go in that direction.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, what our thinking from staff going into the recommendation of the grants committee would be that these grants be very focused, very specific about the types of efforts that would be funded. Because, one of the challenges that we have is such a wide umbrella of things that our funds can be used for. In this case, we're referring to the grants committee of the board some very specific, very sort of narrowly defined programs that would include probably a requirement to work with community-based organizations, the faith-based community, et cetera, to carry out those efforts.
Much more prescribed grants program versus them coming to us with these independent ideas that take a lot more effort to put together. This is much more, things can be a lot more shovel ready.
All those localities that were named, how many of them have applied for any grants currently? How many have come forward and had any ideas?
It's a mixed bag,
Yeah.
is the best way to answer. Some have had almost no participation, others have brought forward a number of grants. Yeah, but keep in mind that they're limited to what they can apply for with what's available within their individual accounts.
Right.
For what they were.
Right.
But I don't think the only two grants that would kind of address this, this specific population, were through state agencies, one with VDH, for substance use coordinators, health districts that were in some of these urban areas. And then a very new one with Virginia State that's going to be providing additional assistance in Petersburg and also working on long-term looking at programs and looking for ways to address stigma and modify successful programs to help in these communities and look at the norms of these communities and how to help modify these programs that they're more valuable.
From my experience, create unity and community for folks. That's probably one of the things that I see the most. No matter where it is, because I get a lot of calls and requests and how to do that. And I see a lot of stuff kind of not hitting the end user, so to speak. Okay, and that's very concerning. Giving them a chance to get well, giving them a chance to have maybe a work program, safe living, center they can call their own go-to. We'll have everything they need under one roof for a couple of years. Right now, we're taking individuals and telling them, go to treatment there, go to outpatient there. You can try to go live over there, but good luck. You're going to have to do X, Y, and Z. And with this opportunity, you have the opportunity, we have the opportunity to create something that probably isn't really there yet. And you can, there's just so much opportunity for growth in that area. It is easy part of the college to actually follow that system of care, because that's what it is. It's a system of care that's created that you can do whether you're partnering with the local CSP and they run it like Sharon's, they have a lot of people that they pay peer work to kind of do it. And that's what I suggest we do, not just give it to a state agency and say, this is what we want, and we'll follow it. Let's just create that for them to give it to us.
Any other discussion? I feel like we are leading the country, and this is just one additional step that we can do that. So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. A motion to second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. At this time, I'd like to ask the board to consider going into closed session to discuss a personnel issue. A draft motion is presented, and at this time, I would like to ask our general counsel to read the draft motion to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, to be fully politically compliant, please entertain this motion. Quote, that the board convene a closed meeting to discuss performance evaluations and compensation of OAA employees pursuant to the personnel exemption at section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia, and that Anthony McDowell and James Shaliston attend the meeting because their presence in the closed meeting is deemed necessary and their presence will aid the board in its deliberation. Close quote.
We move that we approve and authorize our executive director to take the personnel action.
If I
I
could,
certainly appreciate that, but as we return to open meeting, we need a motion to certify the purpose of the closed meeting that just occurred. I would like to ask our general counsel to read the draft motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Quote, that the board of the Opioid Abatement Authority certifies to the best of their knowledge that only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters as they were identified in the motion for executive session were heard, discussed, or considered during the closed session just concluded, close quote. I hope that motion will be considered by the board.
We have a, do we have a motion? We have a motion and a second. On favor of said motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign, that motion carries. Now, I would ask that someone on the board, the motion that I would put forward for someone to make would be to, it's actually on the board, so.
I make the motion to authorize the executive director to implement compensation adjustments to staff members consistent with the discussion held in closed session.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Tony?
So before we get to, well, I have a couple of administrative items about this weekend. See if I can ask the members would stay for just a few minutes after the motion.
Okay. All right. Any other comments, concerns, questions from the board? Well, I feel like we are doing great things for great people. And we'll continue doing that with the team that we have in place. So I will now entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion? We have a second? Let me give it a rise.